Welcome back, viewers, to the latest researches and news. Currently, we have two significant developments about ongoing conflict in Ethiopia. Firstly, about large numbers of Tigrayan fighters have returned to Mekelle after accepting the Tigray People's Liberation Front's call to come home. These are fighters who had been serving in other forces fighting against the Tigray Defense Forces. Secondly, about the Ethiopia's federal government has signed a formal agreement to integrate artificial intelligence into its military covering training, cybersecurity, logistics, electronic warfare, and the Air Force. We explain what this means and why it matters. Let us start with the developments in Tigray, specifically in Mekelle, the regional capital. Reports from Tigray-based sources indicate that a significant number of Tigrayan fighters have arrived in Mekelle after accepting the Tigray People's Liberation Front's formal call to return home. Let us provide context for viewers who may not be familiar with the background. The Tigray Peace Force is one of several armed formations made up of Tigrayan individuals who have chosen to operate alongside the Ethiopian federal government rather than with the Tigray People's Liberation Front and the Tigray Defense Forces. These formations exist because not all Tigrayan fighters or communities have been aligned with the Tigray People's Liberation Front's leadership, particularly after the internal political division that followed the Pretoria Agreement period, when figures like Getachew Reda found themselves on the opposite side of an internal Tigray People's Liberation Front split. Weeks ago, the Tigray People's Liberation Front issued a formal public call addressed to Tigrayan fighters serving in armed groups opposing the Tigray Defense Forces to abandon those positions and return to their communities. The Tigray government described this as an opportunity for those fighters to correct a historic mistake and offered measures to facilitate their safe return. According to today's reports, that call has produced a response. Fighters who had been serving in forces fighting against the Tigray Defense Forces, including, reportedly, members of the Tigray Peace Force, have now arrived in Mekelle. The Tigray government confirmed this arrival. One specific detail from the Tigray government's statement is worth noting. Some of the fighters who have already returned have sent messages back to the soldiers they left behind, calling on them to follow and return home as well. This kind of peer-to-peer communication, from those who have already returned to those still serving in opposing forces, can carry more persuasive weight than any formal official announcement. The Tigray government has connected these returns to a specific context. Preparations are underway for another round of fighting between the Ethiopian federal government and the Tigray Defense Forces. In that context, the Tigray government wants its fighters unified, its ranks complete, and its opponents' forces reduced. The amnesty call serves both a humanitarian purpose and a clear strategic one. From an analytical perspective, the scale of the returns and whether they continue will be an important indicator of the strength of the Tigray Peace Force and similar formations as the conflict potentially escalates further. If fighters continue to return in significant numbers, the effective combat strength of the forces aligned with the Ethiopian federal government on the Tigray front will be reduced. The Ethiopian federal government has not commented publicly on these reported returns. Now to a development on the other side of the conflict that looks toward the future. The Ethiopian Artificial Intelligence Institute and the Ethiopian Federal Defense Forces have signed a formal memorandum of understanding, a legal agreement for cooperation to develop and integrate artificial intelligence into Ethiopia's military. The memorandum of understanding covers several distinct areas of military application. Artificial intelligence can be used to create realistic training environments, digital simulations that allow soldiers and commanders to practice tactics, decision-making, and responses to various scenarios without physical risk or resource expenditure. More advanced simulation means better prepared forces. Modern warfare generates enormous quantities of information from surveillance drones, signals intelligence, satellite imagery, and communications. Artificial intelligence can process and analyze this data faster and at greater scale than human analysts alone, identifying patterns, threats, and opportunities that would otherwise take significantly longer to detect. Military communications, logistics networks, command systems, and intelligence databases are all targets of cyber attacks. Artificial intelligence tools can monitor networks for intrusions, respond to threats in real time, and protect critical systems more effectively than purely manual approaches. Supply chain management, ensuring that the right equipment, ammunition, fuel, and provisions reach the right units at the right time, is one of the most complex challenges in military operations. Artificial intelligence can optimize logistics planning and reduce the kind of shortfalls that have historically affected large military operations. The application of artificial intelligence to operational decision, making the use of data-driven tools to support commanders in making faster, better informed decisions in the field. The Air Force and electronic warfare are specifically mentioned as areas of focus to domains where speed of decision making and the ability to process large amounts of information quickly are particularly critical. The Ethiopian federal government's stated goal is to build a military that relies not only on weapons and personnel numbers, the traditional measures of military strength, but on information, intelligence, and modern technology. This is sometimes described as moving from a quantity-based military to a quality and information-based military. This is a long-term modernization goal. The signing of a memorandum of understanding does not mean artificial intelligence is immediately operational in the Ethiopian military. Developing and integrating these capabilities takes time, training, infrastructure, and sustained investment. But the timing of the announcement during an active conflict in which drones, electronic warfare, and information management have all played important roles suggests that the Ethiopian federal government is drawing lessons from what it has seen on the battlefield, both in terms of what its own forces need and in terms of what it has faced from opponents like the Tigray Defense Forces, which has demonstrated drone and electronic capabilities of its own. Two developments today, both significant in different ways. From Amhara Tigrayan fighters who had been serving in forces opposing the Tigray Defense Forces are returning home in response to the Tigray People's Liberation Front's formal amnesty call. They are sending messages back to their former comrades, calling on them to follow. The Tigray government has connected these returns to active preparations for renewed fighting. From Addis Ababa, the Ethiopian federal government has signed an agreement to integrate artificial intelligence into its military across training, data analysis, cybersecurity, logistics, and electronic warfare. A modernization effort aimed at building a military that competes not just in numbers, but in information and technology. Both developments reflect a conflict that is evolving in its human dimensions and in its technological ones. We will keep covering every development as the situation unfolds. Like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an update.